Yeah, good question. Ryan has a unique problem with we're trying to get rid of. Hope you don't mind me saying this, Ryan. Some scar tissue, and he's had some surgeries, and Ryan found that I think it was that you had cut the surface of your mouth, the top part, and you decided to put some colostrum in there, which is pretty innovative thinking, and it seemed to heal up really quick. And you then thought about what if you did a suppository with the colostrum, which is pretty standard. If you're in the hospital, oftentimes you get something stuck up your rectum even while you're sleeping. Um, the body does receive nutrients that way, and with something like colostrum, it's pretty much whatever you can think of. I hadn't thought of that myself. So on one hand, it's about using a substance like colostrum. You can put just on your finger and put it up there, or put it into a thin a capsule like you get from a vitamin or something. Anything that would help you get it up there, or you can use a little enema. But that's one way to deliver nutrients, and I have not had experience with doing that with colostrum. Um, and also, Ryan had asked me about how to get rid of scar tissue. I'm a little bit more familiar with this one, where there's a product called Wobenzyme, and there's another. Well, I think a lot of companies use something called serapeptase. Serapeptase and Wobenzyme are enzyme-type products that will break down scar tissue. It takes a while. If you're in a position where you have strictures and it's determined that that's actually what it is, because sometimes you might have a fibroid, something like that. It looks like scar tissue, even on a colonoscopy. You would be able to get rid of that by just covering up with mucosal lining. But if you have straight scar tissue strictures, you need to takes these Wobenzyme enzymes. They're proteolytic enzymes that are designed to break down any kind of a tumor. The one we used to use, I don't know if it's still available, the one we used to use all the time was CellGuard. And I think there are several products on the market that use that name, but CellGuard used to come in a green bottle, and it gets rid of all kinds of lumps and bumps. If you have some kind of tumor, I can't say we've used it for cancerous tumors, but some kind of a bump, calcium deposit, it'll reduce that over time. And so with Ryan, we talked about, I think we talked about it several times, about using the Wobenzyme and using it kind of aggressively, because it can take a long time. So you'd want to use at least like 4 twice a day. This stuff's not cheap either, so you have to decide if you can really commit to it. So let's see here. Let's scroll back down here. Yeah, dealing with the narrowing. Okay. What do I recommend after long-term prednisone use? There are so many side effects from the drug. I don't get so much into saying, well, we need to do something to combat, like for instance, bone loss, joint problems. That's not really what I do. That's really more up to the prescribing doctor, which good luck with that. The way I would comment about what to do post prednisone would be, first of all, when we're taking a drug like prednisone, if there's symptoms, you still have symptoms that are present while you're taking the prednisone. A lot of times you take it and it covers up everything, and it does cover it up, gives us some relief and reduces the inflammation. Then what we're going to do is we're going to determine how long we're going to take it, not having any symptoms to watch, and determine when can we start tapering down. And when we taper down, we're looking to see, well, do symptoms pop back up? You keep going down, reducing maybe a little bit every week or two, and we're waiting till you get down maybe to 0 for a symptom to pop up, and that tells us that we're not done yet. And if the symptom is bearable, we don't go back up on the higher dose of prednisone. But if it's unbearable, we go back to the level, the dose of prednisone that was the one that kept the symptoms to a minimum or 0. So the goal is to take the prednisone for as short as possible time, but realistically we have to figure how long does it how much time does it take to heal skin or fat or muscle, and if it's bleeding or if you have mucus, that tells you there's different depths to the tissue. So sort of summarize it again, when we reduce the prednisone, we're looking for, do any symptoms show up? If they do, we go back up to where they didn't, and we adjust the protocol to account for that and go back down again and see if it pops up again. Or when you wean off of it, the symptoms didn't show up, that means you graduate to the next level. Let's see. The side effects, again, to finish my comment about that, I don't know too much about that. I mean, when you have joint problem, bone problem, you take calcium and magnesium. Of course, you always take magnesium with calcium, or you take a glucosamine for the joints if it's damaged the joints. So, how about Tammy Lynn? She says, make suppositories with coconut oil and colostrum. People, and I know, Ryan, you've talked to them to speak about that, is Healing Bottoms. Healing Bottoms is a group of women, I think there's doctors and nurses on staff, who make spectacular suppository products for things like hemorrhoids, inflammatory bowel. They know more about it than I do, and so maybe Tammy has talked to them. But maybe you can ask Tammy how to make a coconut suppository, coconut oil and colostrum suppository. Tim Tynan. Hi, Tim. Is it okay to take additional colostrum besides the recommended supplements? Yes, it is. All it is a food. It's a food that has anabolic properties. What's that mean? It helps tissue grow. So besides the fact, this is how miraculous this is. I love it. Besides the fact that it's the glue that holds the probiotic to the bowel wall, stomach wall, esophagus wall, lung wall, it's also an anabolic agent where it takes the protein that we're giving in amino acids and helps convert it into skin, fat, or muscle, not fat, but skin or muscle faster. When we're healing the bowel wall, there's 3 layers, skin, fat, and muscle. Well, skin is nothing other than a skinny muscle. That's all it is. So you really have skin is a muscle, and then fatty layer, and then the muscle we think of as solid muscle. Colostrum will help generate that growth faster, deliver the proper brick and mortar amino acids. Boom, the colostrum does that. If you add more, you're never going to have a problem unless you have a dairy issue. Some people don't realize that colostrum has dairy. They don't realize they have a dairy issue. They take the colostrum and they start having lactose intolerance symptoms. If you don't have anything like that, take all you want. And let's see here. I also said, can you put it in powdered smoothies or on top of the supplements? Yeah, you can. The rule, I talked about this yesterday in some format. The rule with nutrition, you can combine anything with anything. The idea of separating things came from the pharmaceutical industry, where their stuff is toxic, and it could be dangerous mixing one chemical with the other. Well, that became so prevalent in our lexicon and our thinking that you have to be careful about mixing things. Nature doesn't do that. Nature just says swallow it, ingest it. It's not worried about toxicity. So you can put anything on top of anything. And I tell people, you want to put it on cornflakes. You want to put. I had one guy putting it in beer, the protein type powder, whatever he was taking, I forget. And I'd say, I don't care what you do, as long as you can consume it. We'd only be swallowing antibiotics, but anything else, if you swallow it, you're going to get the benefit of it. Combinations don't matter. Food combining, I talked about this yesterday. Food combining is total bullshit. We need to combine foods. I'll put it this way. Someone has to combine foods. They can't eat this with that. If they have citrus with green vegetables, they have bloating. That's all because their gut is weak. It's not because you need to separate anything. I have a book cover. I haven't finished the book yet. It's a pyramid. And at the base of the pyramid, that's the widest part of the pyramid. I have all kinds of little notches in there saying all the requirements. When you're at the bottom of the pyramid, you have to do all these. You have to eat, chew good. You have to, do all these things combined. And then as you move up, you picture a line going up towards the point of the pyramid. Okay, as you go up higher, the base across gets shorter. That means there's less things you need to do. So you elevate your game by putting the mucosal lining back in there and fixing some of the basic things like, hey, I'm bleeding from my butt. You move that bottom line of the pyramid up higher. There's less notches, less things to do, less things that are troublesome, less things to you need to require to manage that, and eventually you make it up to the point of the pyramid, and there'll be a great big Twinkie waiting for you as a reward. Tammy Lynn, How do you know if you have scar tissue? Should we take serapeptase just in case? Um, yeah, serapeptase, you guys all have to look it up for me. Something about silkworms. Silkworms. They make it. That's where they get it, unless they have another source. That's when I first learned about it. Silkworms make it. So somebody can maybe look that up and share it with us. Scar tissues come about, mainly you learn about through a colonoscopy. I suppose you could find that through some type of a CAT scan. Another way to know is if you're just not getting, you can't get past a certain point of your healing. Oftentimes they'll show up as a narrowing of the passageway. I think Ryan had experience, and most people do have narrowing. They sometimes can't get the waste through. And that's called a blockage. Most of the time someone says they have a blockage, they're just constipated. They go to the hospital, they clean you out. But sometimes you can have a narrowing so much so that the waste can't get through. It's if you had that problem, you're told by the doctor you have the problem, or if you're just not healing and you seem to have trouble passing things through your system, you might have a stricture or scar tissue. If you suspect you do, you might as well take it. I mean, when I say might as well, the enzymes have many other reasons to take them. If you have other lumps and bumps that are developing, it'll knock those out before they really manifest. But robenzyme, serapeptase, and I don't keep up on what's in stores nowadays. I used to own stores. I used to know everything that happens in this industry. There's probably other things that do it. I do not know of anything that will make a reduction of scar tissue faster, except for, back up a little bit, I do, I'm jogging my memory. When you're trying to break down scar tissue, you want to take a fish oil capsule, not one. You're better off taking like a tablespoon of some type of omega oil. What's that going to do? It's going to go in, my memory's coming back now, it's going to go in, enter the cells of the scar tissue the best it can, because the cells become very impenetrable. But wherever it can, it's a good effort to try to soften up the stool, the tissue around there by, when you ingest oils and they enter into a cell, it makes it more pliable, more flexible. Scar tissue is basically when you lose the ability to contain fatty acids in the cell, and it becomes non-manageable, not elastic. So you're hoping there's still some cells that'll uptake the oil. Another one, MSM, one of my favorite things of all time. Can I still say it? Methyl sulfonylmethane. It's a cousin of DMSO. And what's that do? It's osmosis. When you're trying to drag something into a cell, okay, which is the goal of nutrition, and you take MSM with it, it's present, it's going to pull it in like a magnet. And it helps escort the waste. So anything you're taking, let's say I'm taking a multivitamin. I want to get as much as possible out of that multivitamin, take it with MSM. If I had a vitamin company, I would put MSM in everything. There's two things that are vital like that. You have your probiotic colostrum setup, and you have your MSM. Now you're trying to download data into the cell. Well, you're not going to get much help in terms of digesting something if you don't have the probiotic and colostrum present, and you're going to get aid in doing so, sucking in the nutrition if you have MSM present. So anything you're trying to get, even a drug, anything you're trying to get into your cell because you know it'll benefit you, you want MSM. Okay, scar tissue, what do we got here? Yeah, someone said, Tamlin said, watch the added weight. I feel really bad for the people who say, I can't gain weight, I'm too skinny. Yeah, right. Why is stomach discomfort more prominent in the morning? A normal stool then followed by 1 or 2 stools all in the morning. What happens is a lot of enzyme activity, acid activity while you're sleeping. It's not just digesting. You'll say, well, I didn't eat anything at 2 in the morning. Well, there's a lot going on. The immune system becomes very active during that time. And once you're downtime and all systems are low, the enzymes from the immune system become active. They go out and clean house and check up on things and like a security force. So if you don't have sufficient mucosal lining and you have the extra acid being released for immune function, you can wake up with a sore stomach because of that acid. And then you'll see, because so many people have a problem first thing in the morning. They'll say, I don't know why, but the first time in the morning I have to go to the bathroom 5 or 6 times. I get woken up in the middle of the night. It's because of that. You don't have the mucosal lining set up adequately, or you don't have enough like the L-glutamine to build the wall, the muscle and the skin. Something's not fully giving enough padding protection. That's why I had another comment about that and I lost it. I'll think about it in a minute. Mara, what did you say? You said colostrum take on empty stomach probiotic. I'll read it more clearly. Colostrum says take on empty stomach and probiotic, and taken with food is 30 minutes enough to wait between the two. I'm also taking extra colostrum at night before bed. Okay, let's see if I read it. One colostrum says, okay, first thing, we don't believe anything that says on the label. If you're talking about something on the label says take with food or whatever the instructions are, they usually say or consult with your physician. The reason being, when they manufacture something and it is on the label, they have to put something. Some products, I don't know why, not all, they'll say you have to put something on there. FDA, have to put something on there. So the company will say just put some bland thing on there saying, well, take with food, which was like a 1920s concept, because there were food supplements and they needed to take them with food. I think I'm the only one in the industry that says differently. Everything is always better apart from food, because you have food lined up waiting to get through the portals in the stomach out to the bloodstream. And you eat your food, then here comes your vitamins. They're going to have to wait in line. And there's a clock going on in the stomach. Anything that's been swallowed that's in there more than, I don't know what the number of minutes is, say 15 minutes, the body just says, get out of here, clean you out, send you down to be released to the kidneys of the bowel. So we don't want our nutritional supplements to be waiting in line behind something like a sausage, right? So we take it a little bit later when the crowd's not there anymore. Let's see if there's any part of that question I missed. And probably taken with food. You don't want to take it in with food. 30 minutes between the two, well, only 30 minutes between supplements and food. And you also take extra colostrum at night before bed. Perfect. It says here, my email colostrum seems really expensive. Any way to get it cheaper? Well, you can go to the farm. You know, there are people that will sell it. I've never taken it that way. You shop around. I mean, I wouldn't say colostrum's colostrum, but it's easy to get good quality colostrum. If you just keep, shopping around, I really don't think it's hard to find cheaper colostrum. The best in the business is a company called Tegracell. I don't think they sell a brand of Tegracell. They sell it to other companies, and they'll brag about it. They'll say, our brand has Tegracell on it. That's the gold standard. The rule is supposed to try to get it as close to the feeding. It wants to say in the label like 2 hours within feeding, 3 hours, 6 hours. That means that you get more good colostrum in the capsule, supposedly. I'm not on the farm. Let's see. Carolyn, can you heal the mucosal lining without probiotic and colostrum? No. What about slippery elm and glutamine? Okay. The mucosal lining is this sort of sludgy, watery-looking Vaseline stuff that's semi-skin, and it's really made out of the probiotic and fatty acids and colostrum. Underneath that, you have your first layers of real skin, and then fat and muscle. Slippery elm helps heal that physical part, the skin, the fat, and the muscle. Glutamine is the major amino acid that does healing of tissue. You're always better off if you have more than one amino acid. There's 22 essential ones. The more you have, the better you're going to absorb all of them. They work together. It's not always practical to take a tablet or a powder with all amino acids. So what companies do, they say the lead guy is glutamine. Okay, so we take that one, and it works pretty good on its own. But slippery elm, what's that do? It's an amazing herb. It helps, like a worker, transform glutamine into skin, into fat, not fat, muscle. And itself, the nature of it, it blends into helping form skin. The very tissue that makes up the skin, the bark, is similar to skin, and it semi-turns into it was used by the Indians for burn victims. It helped protect them and helped speed up the growth of skin and soothe the tissue. So glutamine builds the muscle and the skin, and slippery elm help you do that. The probiotic and colostrum build the mucosal lining. There's no way to build that without those. So this comes up now. What about if I'm lactose intolerant? This has come up like many times in the last couple of days. Okay, when you have an allergic reaction to something, you say, I took the colostrum and I get sick. First of all, that means that it's actually good for you, not at that level. When your body responds to something, reacts to something, different than just ignoring it. You swallow something, nothing happens. And you know what? That thing is probably not really important to you. You swallow something, you get a headache. Every time, I get a headache every time. That means that that substance actually has something off you because your body's actually receiving it and reacting to it. It seems to it to be important. So what do? Well, we decrease the dose. And we keep decreasing it to the point where we say, we just swallowed some and we didn't get the headache. That might be a really diluted form. There's something called a max Planck level. And what that means is that when you dilute something, so say we get colostrum, so you know what, I take a half a pill, a quarter of a pill, I still get the headache, but I want to take it because I need it for that colostrum. We'd open up the capsule, drop a little bit powder in the water, drink it. If you still get a headache, you put more water in there, you dilute it. That's the whole form. That's what homeopathy is. There'll be a level that'll take care of the headache and also give you no reaction. So there is a company that makes lactose and some other sugar free called Proper Nutrition. There's two factors that are forget the other one, it's kind of obscure, that are dairy factors in colostrum, and they take it out. So it's technically a dairy product, but with the parts that people react to negatively, takes it out. Other than that, you're going to have to dilute your colostrum. We have BD. Is scar tissue curable via your protocol, or is it a condition beyond mucosal line healing? Well, partially, I answered that partially before. It isn't something that I can promise I can take care of on a any time that's reasonably expected. I mean, if you have bleeding and you have mucus and you have some pain, yeah, I can give you a real reasonable time that can fix that. Scar tissue, you got to take those serapeptase and maybe both, Wobenzyme, and just keep your fingers crossed, and you take it with MSM and fatty acids. That'll move along fast. If it's relatively new, see what happens with scar tissue. You get like a callus, first of all. Okay, callus is like, you know what callus is for if you have abrasion of, say, your hands, and your body produces extra layers of skin to protect the underlying tissue because you're rubbing a handle of a shovel or something. And so you stop shoveling, or you put on gloves, and the body will peck away slowly at that callus, and then you'll say, wow, I don't have any calluses several years later, several months later. And if you don't, so you get a callus when there's some type of inflammation, abrasion, and that will be in your colon, and you say, wow, you have an area here where there's no protection with the mucosal lining, and the acid or the food coming by scrapes it, develops a callus. You get a callus in your esophagus as your first initial protection. It says, you're not going to burn a hole through me. I'm putting walls of skin up here, especially in the esophagus. If that doesn't get fixed in the esophagus, for instance, you develop GERD. GERD is when that scar tissue, well, it's not scar tissue yet. It goes from callus to, I guess I can call it semi-scar tissue. It hasn't solidified yet. And if you put a glove on when you're shoveling, you say, wow, why didn't I do that before? The calluses will go away. Putting the glove on in the esophagus or any other part of the GI tract is installing the mucosal lining, because that's just like the glove now between you and the stomach acid. Now when you have the glove on, the calluses go away, and the semi-scar tissue or calluses will fade away because the body says, oh, we don't need this anymore, we have the mucosal lining here. If you have straight scar tissue, it's going to take a long time. I know I've said it several times. It's frustrating, and sometimes people opt for surgery when it's really minimal or isn't going to cause any residual problems. What are we looking at here? Colostrum seems really expensive. Any way to get it cheaper? Same question as before. Or did I read the same one? Yes, I did. Terralyn, not Tammy. No. VD, let's go down. My email. If diarrhea is a symptom and the supplement's not working, what are your thoughts about taking Pepto-Bismol or Imodium? Excellent question. Good option. I always tell people when I'm beginning to treat them, don't be afraid to walk around with a bottle of Imodium in your back pocket. Pepto-Bismol in the glove compartment. Why take a chance? With the Saccharomyces boulardii, 3/4 of the time, that's going to take care of the diarrhea within days. If you ramp it up the way I say, take one. This is the way it takes Saccharomyces boulardii. You take one, you give it 24 hours. If you find that I still have diarrhea, nothing's changed. The next day you take 2. 24 hours, still have diarrhea, take 3. Next day, take 4. We don't go over 4 usually because it's a matter of diminishing returns. 5, 6, 7, 8 don't seem to work any better than 4. So the Saccharomyces boulardii is like a sponge. It's not really healing anything. Technically it is because it needs to be part of the community of bacteria and yeast and such living in the GI tract. You need that spongeability of it at various times. But what we're really doing is we're holding it down, the water down, and we don't want to like totally shut off like if you take Imodium and you're not having any bowel movements at all, that's very much counterproductive because you have to have some movements to do what? To let the acid go out. See, that's the problem. If you don't have enough mucosal lining, the body says, produce some water and get rid of all this acid. Okay, but we can't work. We can't go to meetings. We can't go to a concert. What happens is we say, wait a minute, let's just turn the faucet off a little bit. Give me some Imodium. Not taking enough to make myself constipated. Because if you're constipated for 2 or 3 days after that, you're taking acid from 3 meals a day are not getting out the back door. If you're sitting there without mucosal lining, that's more acid to do more eating. So you have to walk a tightrope. So yes, it's a good thing to take those, but be careful. You have to micromanage it so you don't give yourself constipation. Tamia Lynn's always on the ball with her magic fingers on the keyboard. She says proper nutrition, no lactose, and casein. That's the one I forgot. How much, this is Sandy, how much glutamine powder a day is good to take to heal the gut? I'm not much of a milligrams guy. Pretty standard when you talk about slippery elm. The powder always seems to have the same amount, and I forget what that amount is because I don't care. It's more like taking a tablespoon a day for severe cases, starting out. For not so severe, which mean like for instance no bleeding, you take 2 teaspoons, and then what do? You work your way up every 4 or 5 days if there's no changes. When you're taking slippery elm capsules, it's futile because these powders, marshmallow, glutamine, slippery elm, they're meant to really be measured in tablespoons or at least maybe teaspoons. So it takes, I think we measured one day, 32 capsules of slippery elm to equal a tablespoon of slippery elm, and you got to do that twice. So you'd be taking 60 capsules a day, and it's just not practical. The slippery elm, I think the glutamine is kind of neutral tasting. Slippery elm, a lot of people don't like. Put it in smoothie and mix it with something. But to try to take it in capsules is not going to do much unless you're a very little child. Okay, so to answer that question more completely, I do not measure units like milligrams, grams, other than to say, I say tablespoon, half a tablespoon, teaspoon. So there's no reason you need to know more than that. When we're reading labels for 500 units or milligrams, it's kind of futile. You just need to know how much of the stuff you have to swallow. And you do that mainly by my guidance, but also watching your body. Okay, drinking slippery elm and glutamine together, no blood, but some loose stool still. Should I add in the probiotic and colostrum in addition to the elm and the glutamine? Yes, good. You can always mix everything together. The order of things should always be that. I write the prescriptions with this in mind. From top to bottom is always probiotic, colostrum, then GI Select, for instance, and those are the orders of things. When you think in terms of should I take glutamine, well, it should be assumed that you're also going to be taking probiotic colostrum with it because that's the top of the list. And yes, you can mix anything together. Here's my friend Daniel. Danny, why does the medical community, why they say UC and Crohn's is autoimmune? What's their rationale? Well, the rationale is that they don't know. Many years ago, and it might have been the 50s, certainly the 60s, they just started seeing these conditions trickle in. And right at the time they were going from the germ theory of disease to the immune theory of disease. And that's what they do every 30, 40, 50 years. They switch from some research, perhaps, whatever's in vogue. And so at that time they were starting to usher in the immune system theory of disease, and everything started getting blamed on the immune system. Instead of before, everything was blamed on germs, antibiotics. And then they shifted over to immune system. So all the research was slanted towards that. Then also they didn't know what it was. So besides believing everything was becoming an immune disease, they didn't know what to call it. So if you track it all the way through the internet and just keep going days after day, week after week, you're going to find out there's never been any clear declaration, never declaration at all, saying we have proven it's an immune disease. It always comes down to it's a theory. And if you get to the bottom line, Wikipedia or all of them, you're going to say it's a theory. And there was no one anywhere, University of Illinois, Troy State, nobody, Dr. Wachowski, nobody has said, and then just follow the leader from there. Well, they have to have a system. Now they blame everything on inflammation and caused by the immune system. I believe a lot of it is. I'm not anti-immune system theory. I'm more of understanding it's not causing this. Here's another thing I want to try to get not too technical. It took me many years to figure this out, and even longer to figure out how to say it. The immune system is involved. And this is inside scoop that I think I can explain it really clearly. People will say, well, hey, look at all that immune activity, the doctor's going to say. And look at that's where the injury is. That's causing the injury. And I say, no, you have it asked backwards. The immune system showed up because there's an injury there. Okay? And what's the immune system do? So you have a patch of tissue that doesn't have any mucosal lining. It's getting hit with the stomach acids, causing inflammation. Okay, the immune system shows up and says, can I help? And how does the immune system work? It spews out chemicals that are acids. So remember the premise. Lack of mucosal lining, which is totally unnatural. Don't forget that point. Inflammation in the immune system shows up just doing its job. And by nature of eating germs, that's how it kills germs, it eats them, it's adding inflammation because the tissue is not covered, not because the immune system is doing anything wrong. So then they come along and say, let's smush that immune system down. So you're taking that part of the factor, that story, that cycle, out of the picture. Now you don't have the immune system's contribution. Remember, it's not the cause. The fire engine didn't start the fire. The fire engine showed up when it was called. Okay? So now you take the immune system's innocent contribution out of the picture and inflammation goes down. And they think they discovered something fantastic. Oh, so we have to take the rest of our life and we have to smush down the immune system? So it's what I said in their belief that there's no, it's like seeing is believing. They don't see anything different, so that's what they believe. And they're all following a theory. Madman, number 4, autoimmunity would be a symptom, not a cause. Yes, that's exactly right. It's reacting. Auto is reacting, it's not the cause. And I've been proving that for years. That's why I say, and it seems contradictory, I say, bring on the anti-inflammatory drugs. Hey, but Dr. Snow, you're a natural guy. No, I'm a healing guy. Whatever it takes. Bring on the peanut butter sandwiches, if that's what it takes. You're sitting there with a system that's out of control. Cap protectin is off the charts. We had one yesterday, 3,000. And you're on fire. These natural herbs are not developed to handle that. Think about it. You had beginning of time. Okay, you evolutionists, if you're anti-evolutionists, cover your ears. Beginning of time, things started to develop and evolve. Okay, the herbs and such were developed by nature to heal these conditions that our ancestors had to deal with. Then all of a sudden came this giant meteorite, boom, hit the earth, called antibiotics. We know it wiped out your good stuff, your good bacteria, mucosal lining, and now you had acid having exposed, the tissue is exposed to acid. Sky-high tsunami levels of inflammation in those herbs look at this and say, wow, we weren't designed to deal with acute stuff. We were designed to deal with chronic stuff. So we sit there and say, how come nobody's getting any results with these herbs just on their own from these high levels of inflammation? It's because you're not thinking outside the box. You need to call the drugs. Let's get the drugs in here. Use them short term. Hallelujah. I tell you what, if I'm in pain, give me some drugs. I'll probably cut in line. Because it's going to lower the inflammation. Because those are so unnatural. Brings it down, and then the natural stuff can creep in. It's like the fire engine. They knock the flames down with a hose. Now they can go in and rescue the cat. So they are. You're incorrect if you take the position like a Seventh-day Adventist. I'm not doing anything that's not natural. Then you're not my patient then, because if I believe you need prednisone, you're going to benefit from it, or I won't be able to work with you because you won't do the effing protocol. Prednisone, any of those drugs, they reduce inflammation. We don't want to skip over to the line, over to the biologics. We shouldn't have to. And how do we make that decision before I move on here? We make the decision to move on to a biologic if you just double up in pain. You know, and my stuff, the other drugs aren't working, and these doctors want to jump right over to a biologic. I say, what about the prednisone? What about the azagol? What about those other things prior to that? So it's the last resort, and when it is the last resort, we embrace it. Because what's it going to do? It's going to lower that immune system, which is going to lower the inflammation, allow the good stuff to work. We turn everything into an asset. When you're dealing with me, it's only positivity, not based on bullshit, just positive thinking about reality. Everything you're presented with has a side to it, like a Rubik's Cube, where you can find the way to use it in a positive way to our benefit. Okay, enough of that. I get on a roll with that one. Tammy writes, they're idiots. Okay. Tara Lynn, does a low CRP and sed rate often indicate you aren't flaring? Yes. Those are signs of there's little chemicals that are released, like a prostate. When someone has a prostate problem, this inflammation, the prostate-specific antigen is like a little signal. Like a little signal that says, hey, we're inflamed down here. By the way, you want to heal your prostate? Take some Probac and colostrum. Take some glutamine. Oh, as a matter of fact, just do the IBS protocol without this Saccharomyces boulardii. Yeah, we heal prostate stuff all the time. And that's easily measured. You know, you have your prostate test. That's what we're going to talk about on the in the knowledge base, in the Holistic Gastroenterology website, where you get your $195 protocol. All that stuff's in there. So when I, in the middle of the day, think of, oh, prostate, that's right, I can just talk, and we're going to put it in the knowledge base, and you'll be able to check in. You'll get an email telling you, oh, he just talked about something. What is it? Prostate? I'm not interested in that. Cystitis, another one. Oh my God, cystitis. All you women out there, well, I don't know why men don't get it. I think it's estrogen. And so cystitis is when you get cysts inside your bladder. And they put this tool in there, and they take a picture of it. And so how do we beat that? Interstitial cystitis. Think of it like a colon. Hey, wait a minute, this guy thinks outside the box. And you know what? You put the probiotic, and we know what I'm going to say, colostrum. You pull up the layers of the tissue, and the cyst goes away. A cyst in a bladder is nothing other than an ulcer in the stomach. Okay? Liver, same thing. You name it, I'm going to hit you with the GI Cure protocol. We'll have to give her another name for the prostate protocol, I guess. What else we have here? Madman. My wife is STA. She has no problem with both forms of medicine. Well, that's the way it really should be. If you want to be a hard ass, you're probably going to die. All right, all these people out there refusing to take the shot, the vaccine. I mean, we all have our own point of view, but it's really through a misunderstanding. You know, the risk for the virus versus the potential of 1 out of a trillion for the vaccine. I don't blame the anti-vaxxers that have the problems with the children, um, with the different syndromes. That's a little different than somebody just sitting around saying, I don't want to take it, you know? So, I don't have any more questions at the moment. I was going to talk a little about my human biocomputer theory that has to do with food allergies. You know, you people, oh, here's one from Sandy S. We'll get to this if we have time for it. Will this protocol heal fissures? Yes, fissures and fistulas. And we don't pay attention to them. If you have a fissure, I say thank you for telling me that. We'll never need to discuss it again. We need to look at it. We need to poke and pry at it. Same thing about a fistula. You know, fistula, they put cetons in there to help it drain. But that's not the problem. We don't have to put any cream and tissue and massage it and all that. We just do this. A fissure and a fistula are nothing other than an outgrowth of the fire going on inside your bowel when you have inflammatory bowel conditions. And what happens is there are nerves connected to everywhere where there's a ulceration or inflammation, and those nerves travel in different places. Well, the nerves that are connected from where you have the bonfire in your gut to the surface of your butt or in around the rectal area, those will heat up because they're attached to where the fire is, like a wire. And when they heat up, they burn tissue, and they can keep on running, creating a canal right to your butt cheek. Or friability, when you have like a fissure, the tissue that's being heated up by that wire can also just become fragile, and it can split. You know, when you're having a bowel movement, particularly if you're constipated, that'll never go away unless you put out the bonfire. So what we do is we put out the bonfire inside by treating you with the GI Cure protocol, and we barely pay attention to the fissure. And we just say, how's it going once in a while? No cream, no nothing. It'll fade away when we fix the bonfire. Both of those, the fissure and the fistulas. Hemorrhoids are a different story. Hemorrhoids are just a pain in the ass, literally. Every time I start to say that, I realize, oh, don't say that. So cliche, but they are. It takes so friggin' long. That's like taking the wobenzyme to break down the scar tissue. It happens, but it happens slowly. Okay. Morgan, you speak highly of Dr. Zach Bush's ion supplement. Do you have patients that have taken it? Many. It fell out of the loop for me. I haven't talked about it. There's a lot on my own Facebook page. If you look at the old posts, I almost wrote exclusively on that for months. And I tell a lot of good success stories, and people contribute to it. I forget some of the terminology. His theory is based on there's junctions, joints, where the tissue joins together in the bowel, and you can have little cracks, openings, where waste and things go through there. And there's so much more there. I wouldn't want to pretend to be able to speak on it, especially not being brushed on it recently. All I knew is he blew the top of my head off when I saw it. I was simultaneously pissed because I thought I was a man, and then I realized he's the man, or at least he's the other man. And of course I'm joking. I want it to be good for everybody, but it's amazing stuff. So I have many patients. Go back and read stuff that's 6 months to a year old on my own Facebook page, not the one from that I write on a lot, the past, present, future patients. What supplement is good to take for heartburn that wakes you up in the middle of the night? What? Oh, heartburn that wakes you up in the middle of the night. I thought she meant she wants to be woken up. D-gel, but before that, prior to that, is my concoction of probiotic, liquid probiotic. I'm kind of proud of that one. I actually forget that I invented that one, and I don't know if any other practitioners ever picked up on that. The idea is that you take pills of probiotics, because you need to get probiotics in there, colostrum, and you take it in a pill form, slides right through and goes into the stomach and the bowel, and the esophagus says, well, what about me? I need some of that stuff. And we figured that I'm thinking about drinking milk and how you can think of it leaving a residue. If we drink it in a liquid form, no capsule, it's gonna leave a residue. And then I went one step better. I said, how about, since we need colostrum, right, to make it stick, put colostrum powder in the bottle. And everyone's going to say, how much? And I'm going to say some, probably something like a teaspoon. You take a little bit of the liquid probiotic out to make room for it. And just do that once. You don't have to do that every time you take it. You shake it up real good every time you go to use it. Take a tablespoon, or what I've done in the past is take a chug of it, and no food or drink for at least a half hour, because you want to let it settle in. If you drink or eat, it'll wash it away. I created a hybrid of that, one that Tammy had taken, and I think I can say Tammy will probably also want to chime in. She had a pretty rough case. I think we've got her 99% healed. We have kind of a famous case in England where a woman has some growths on her esophagus, I think it was, and it's supposed to be impossible to get rid of. We coated it. We had to go to a liquid probiotic in the UK called Simprove, and I think Tammy was able to get a hold of it, and we just threw a bunch of stuff in there and said, throw this in there too. I don't even remember what all that it was, but it's basically liquid probiotic, colostrum, twice a day. And if you want to get fancy, I don't know how much it really helps, you take a DGL, deglyceride licorice, and there's not much else that helps. It's a difficult area to get. I don't treat it publicly. I don't tell people I treat it because it's a pain in the ass. As I said before, I hate treating it, and if I treat you for it, I'm going to hate you. And because until we get it fixed, and then we're going to be brothers and sisters. Okay? But that you can't heal that without that. Otherwise, you'll be taking these purple pills and such forever. And you can take that. Not a bad idea to take that. Don't ever just stop in cold turkey, because they're suppressing acid. You're going to get an outflow of acid. You think you had a heart attack. Let's see what else we have here. See. Scroll down again. Scroll back up. I got IBD symptoms. Remember, IBD is a no-no. It's irritable bowel condition is what I call it. IBD says disease. It's not a disease. I got IBD symptoms after a really stressful event, not after any kind of antibiotics. Are there any tips for those people? Well, the tip is that you had a inflammatory bowel condition waiting to happen. I suppose if there was some kind of such extreme endured long-term stress, it could have the effect. But other than that, just your normal stress, or maybe go through a divorce or something that's pretty bad. You have to really have a pre-existing problem, which means you had an antibiotic when you were 2 years old, 10 years old. You don't know the connection. All of a sudden, you get heartburn at 32. You're not going to think about the antibiotic when you were 8. It had to be a condition that was going to manifest at some point. My tip for those people is you go back and you put the mucosal lining back in. You might not want to go back in and do the whole GI cure protocol, but you got to put that mucosal lining back in. If you don't, then you're not going to get healed. And next time you have terrible stress, because when you have stress, your body releases a lot of acid. Why does it do that? Because it interprets anytime it feels threatened. It feels threatened that anything could be happening. You could be poisoned, so it wants to release. The acid is going to release to digest any poison, and so when you release that and you have an area that doesn't have enough mucosal lining, scorched. I'll comment a little bit what I was going to say about the human biocomputer. I used to watch my grandmother. She pick, and others you have done this yourselves, pick mushrooms and throw a silver coin, when there was such a thing, $50, in the pan that you were cooking in. And if it turned black, that means there was a poisonous mushroom in there. What is a poisonous mushroom? And why do psilocybin and such mushrooms make you high? Ayahuasca, I forget the name of it, some kind of toad saliva or something. You know why? Because it takes a while for those body to figure those things out. Those are complex chemicals. And it takes the body a while. It says, well, we don't know. You need a few minutes. If it's a poison like from a snake bite or a mushroom, you could die before that. It'll destroy your liver, some other things. While it's trying to figure it out, it's spinning. It says, your computer spins sometimes, thinking. That's why we get high on mushrooms because it says, well, this is complex. We don't know. We don't see this every day. And then they wear off, after a couple hours or so. If you have really good digestion, you might not get as high as the next guy. Ayahuasca, if you know what that is, whew, intense stuff. It's the same thing. Human biocomputer is your mucosal lining. Not only does it act like a blocking, like a firewall that blocks the acid from hitting the wall of the gut, it acts like a computer. It downloads, you download data in the form of food. Every food has a squiggle, a line, a dot as a code. The mucosal lining is supposed to recognize that. If you're walking around saying, I have celiac, I am lactose intolerant, and you think you have a disease and you've given in to the idea that I'm celiac, I'm sorry you don't, if you didn't have it when you were born. If all of a sudden at 32 you, it's not sorry, I should say good news, you say, I just can't tolerate dairy anymore. I can't have gluten. All of a sudden at 26 years old. You're not celiac. Celiac is when you're born that way, and there are very few of you. If you were that way out of the womb, then sure. Lactose intolerance, a lot of those people never got the colostrum. So a baby is swept away. I had one of these last week, or maybe this week, a baby is swept away for some medical reason. After the first day, it's not back with mom yet, misses out on the colostrum, it becomes colicky. Well, that child will likely have problems early on, and you could trace it back to that. But hardly ever does it manifest on the level of full-blown lactose intolerance unless you are born that way. And usually it's among, I think it's Eskimos and some other quite obscure populations. They never had dairy in their diet ever. So what we want to do is we want to fine-tune or update our software. And someone asked a question today, it passed on to me, about rotating probiotics. We'll talk about that next. That's not my favorite subject to talk about because it's complex. I'll just touch upon it for 1 minute. It is a good idea, particularly if you have, now here's why I disagree with these doctors. They say, SIBO, stay away from antibiotics. They don't know what the fuck they're talking about. They see the word bacteria. Okay? This knee-jerk reaction. Don't take probiotics. Take our antibiotic, and your SIBO will bounce right back worse. But don't take a probiotic because we're dumb enough to not look at the fact that there's bacteria and there's bacteria. And they're thinking, don't take more bacteria in. That's one of my worst ones. It's one of the reasons I don't like talking about SIBO. But when you have SIBO or some type of software problem where there's this constant bloating and you can't seem to get to the end of it by any other means, you rotate probiotics. Here's where it gets confusing and why I don't want to talk about it, and I will a little bit. Just another minute. You see Lactobacillus bifidus and some of the other more common strains. Well, that might mean, for instance, Lactobacillus could mean Caucasian. Other one would be Negroid, Asian. Different groups, populations, all humans, but the Caucasians aren't all Caucasians. They're all the same culture. Their culture is different in terms of their habits, and even within certain groups, there'll be certain higher instances of certain diseases. So when you look at Lactobacillus, and you look at two bottles, you say, well, they both have the same ingredients. No, they have the same name on there, but these cultures in the good companies were cultivated like training a dog over hundreds of years. You look at some of these companies, like I think Natrev is one of them. These were companies that were creating these strains since the Middle Ages, and they did it in mind. Whenever there was some kind of a plague or something, they did it like a vaccination. They bred the strains of bacteria like I would train a hunting dog to, say, fetch a bird I had shot to do certain behaviors. And so one strain of Lactobacillus is not the same as the other. They can be just as different in terms of the lifestyle and different types of disease syndromes they might be susceptible to as Yugoslavians versus French. So it's deceptive, it's hard to explain, but you're better off rotating because you're going to get the best of all. So that's it for now, and when you do, you always take colostrum with it when you're rotating. So that's it for today. We had a lot of glitches in the beginning. I can't promise we won't have any more. Try training me to push any kind of button. I just need someone to sit here with me and push the button for me. And by the way, I mentioned earlier today, I may sound a little uptight today because actually I'm wearing a Speedo that's, I wear it extra small, and I have one that's went through the dryer or something. It's like 4 times too small. I'm like, I think you have to hang them up on the clothesline because otherwise the dryer. So be careful, guys. Whatever size you're wearing, you might want to buy a size up or two because if they go through the dryer, you're going to suffer like I did for an hour here. So anyways, we'll be back Monday. Go to Friday. I'm thinking about doing a show on the radio on Monday. That'll be put on the Facebook page. There'll be a radio station announcement within the week of a podcast I'm doing over there. I actually arranged to have my own radio station. So I'm trying to get coordinated what days I'm on, what days I'm off. I'll be back here on Friday with this show and make an announcement about the radio show maybe on Monday. That'll be on the Facebook page and on my website. Holistic Gastroenterology, if you want to take advantage of everything having to do with the GI Cure protocol and the knowledge base. So I'll be back here next week. So long.